letting go of entitlement in a relationship, I think, often reveals a lot of vulnerability. Feeling entitled to things can be a way of protecting against a fear of not being chosen, a fear of not mattering to someone. So if I feel entitled to XYZ behavior in a relationship, then I don't have to ever consider the fact that I'm not chosen. If I feel entitled to be chosen all the time, if I believe that and I enforce that and my partner goes along with that, I don't ever have to be exposed to the fear of not being chosen. And it's really hard, but really worth doing the work, I feel, to tolerate that fear and feel, okay, I might not be chosen every time, but that doesn't mean I don't matter.
Welcome to All the Love, the podcast where we deep dive into all things queer and non-monogamous relationships.
We're Ian Rowe, longtime practitioners in coaching, therapy, and education, with a focus on supporting humans in said relationships.
Every quarter, we pick a theme and host a series of live podcast recordings.
And here's one we made earlier.
Hope that it speaks to you.
All the love.
From E, that's me.
And Rowe, that's me. Okay, cute.
Hello. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Elizabeth Cunningham, and I have been working in the field of gender, sexuality, and relationships, studying since 2008. I have a degree in political science and women, gender, and sexuality studies with an emphasis on religion, which basically means that I studied how power dynamics in the systems that be impact gender and sexuality, which is a lot, by the way. And then I worked with a domestic violence center for 3 years after I graduated, and I educated people on domestic violence and what it is, how it happens, why it happens, and how to help people get out of abusive relationships. And then I determined to switch my focus to being on the more preventative side. And so I wanted to help people get into healthy relationships and understand what healthy relationships are and hopefully work my former colleagues out of a job. We can only dream. And so that led me to transformational life coaching. I really like transformational life coaching as a modality because it focuses on where are you at right now? Where would you like to be? And then what is blocking you from getting to where you would like to be? And I'm definitely a forward moving person. And so that really spoke to me personally. And it's also been extremely helpful for my clients that I've worked with since 2017. So I've been training as a coach since 2016, working as a coach since 2017, and I work with the polyamorous and queer communities. I also identify as polyamorous and queer. I am the L in the LGBTQIA plus alphabet mafia. And yeah, is that all? Is that all? I think that's all.
And my name's Roe Moed. I am a writer, a coach, and a trainee therapist. I'm in advanced training in transactional analysis psychotherapy. And I've been in private practice as a therapist since last year. And I've been in practice as a coach for now 4 years. I specialize in working with polyamorous people and relationship anarchists with a focus on personal growth and developing autonomy, building relationships that really work for you. So those are my areas of focus now, but I was inspired by what Elizabeth just shared to tell you a little bit about my background. Before I became a coach, I was in adult education for about 10 years. So I have a real interest in empowering people with knowledge and creating environments that are safe for people to learn in, like how to actually communicate ideas in a way that people can receive them. That's something that informs quite a lot of my writing and the way that I work as a coach and program runner and whatever. Got a question about transactional analysis psychotherapy from the chat, and you don't want to get me started, but I'll give you a little brief intro to it because I could talk about that for the next hour. I'm trying to think what I could share about transactional analysis without boring you all to death, because I know we've had a specific question about it, but maybe others will be like, I don't really care. It's a modality of psychotherapy. I mean, a lot of them have a lot of crossover, I have to say. When I look at other modalities, many of them say quite similar things with different words, but it has its own framework, its own theoretical framework. a very rich and detailed theoretical framework. And essentially, transactional refers to any kind of interaction between people. So the idea is that if I wink at you, or I smile at you, or I say hello, or I tell you a deep, dark secret, or I yell at you and insult you, all of these are interactions that have an impact on you. And every interaction we have gives something to someone else, whether that's something positive or negative. So in that sense, it's a transaction, it gives something. So transactional analysis refers to analyzing the ways that we interact and what that can tell us about the internal structures that we are carrying and the beliefs we have and our scripts about life and all the rest of it. It's really not mainstream, unfortunately, because Eric Berne, the founder of transactional analysis, wrote a book in the 60s called Games People Play that was a multi-million-dollar success back in the day. He famously bought one of those expensive cars off the earnings from that book. And it's one of those books that people, if you have heard of it, are like, oh yeah, games people play. But then beyond that, it hasn't really made it into the mainstream. So that's my mission for the next decade, probably, to work on that.
What I think about when we introduce ourselves, Ro, for things like this is that we are so well positioned based off of our nerddoms to have this conversation, and not in an arrogant way. You're so great, so good, but rather like my nerddoms are political science and relationships. And so relationship anarchy is just such a beautiful merriment of all of my nerddoms. And then talking about relationship anarchy, polyamory, transactional analysis. I nerd out about how we nerd out about this stuff. Very meta nerding out right now.
Yeah. No, I feel the same. We bring a lot of different strings to our communal bow. So
Yeah.
I think so those all of those things may or may not come up in today's episode, but they definitely do come up a lot in our work. So it's good to have laid the groundwork for that.
Absolutely.
So shall we dive in and read the principle that we're covering today, love and respect instead of entitlement? Do you want to read this one?
Absolutely. So, yeah, we're covering the second principle inside of relationship anarchy based off of Andie Nordgren's Relationship Anarchy Manifesto. In reading this to you, this is not the word of God. It is not beyond reproach. It is not infallible. And in fact, I think the thing that makes things like this so poignant is the fact that it's just a point of which we can have discussions around. Just, okay, let's think about that. So anything that Ro and I say today and anything inside of this is not this is how it should be, but rather, wow, let's talk about that and discuss that further and see what works and what doesn't work about that. So there you go. There's my caveat. Go read the thing, Elizabeth. All right. So the second bullet point is love and respect instead of entitlement. Deciding to not base a relationship on a foundation of entitlement is about respecting others' independence and self-determination. Your feelings for a person or your history together does not make you entitled to command and control a partner to comply with what is considered normal to do in a relationship. Explore how you can engage without stepping over boundaries and personal beliefs. Rather than looking for compromises in every situation, let loved ones choose paths that keep their integrity intact without letting this mean a crisis for the relationship. Staying away from entitlement and demands is the only way to ensure that you are in a relationship that is truly mutual. Love is not more quote unquote real when people compromise for each other because it's part of what's expected.
Just letting that wash over us. I mean, I made a list of what this section is not about, if you want to start
Oh
with
my
that.
God, yes, that sounds amazing. Let's go.
Because I think there's a lot of stuff in here that is
Yeah.
really easy to overgeneralize or misinterpret.
Mhm.
So I'm going to say what I think this section is not about. And there are 6 bullet points I've come up with. This section isn't about having no needs, preferences, or desires, accepting anything or tolerating behavior that hurts you, avoiding commitment or depth, never compromising or meeting each other halfway, emotional detachment or low maintenance energy, and finally, it is not about abandoning your own boundaries in the name of respect.
Absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
so many people read this or hear this and have a reaction to it. And it's interesting, actually. I just shared on Instagram about the fact that we're doing this section today. And I posted without comment just the text that we're looking at today.
Mm,
And in my stories, invited people to share questions or thoughts that they had.
mm,
And the only response that I've been able to check so far, because I literally did this a few minutes before coming on, the only response I saw was someone saying that sometimes you do need to compromise, and sometimes it's fair to have someone take into account the history that you have with them. And I have two thoughts on that.
mm.
One is what I've said already, that this is not about never compromising. It's just saying that compromise isn't in and of itself a virtue, that you shouldn't have to compromise on literally every single thing. Sometimes you just have a difference of opinion with someone or a different need, and that's okay. Like, it's giving permission to let that be something that happens in relationships. And that goes against the traditional relationship belief that compromise is something that you always must do in a relationship for it to be healthy. So I thought it was interesting that that was the reaction. And this isn't meant to be like critical or mean about the person who had that reaction, rather than looking for compromises in every situation. To me, says in some situations, look for compromises. But I think people hear that and they think, what if my partner doesn't want to compromise with me anymore, ever? What am I going to do? And it's not about black and white. It's about judging it based on the situation, case by case, and compromising where it's in alignment with both of you and not compromising where it's not. So, yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying none of this is about black and white rights and wrongs. It's about creating space for autonomy and decision making in the moment.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And what it makes me think of as well is Ro and I run a program every year. It's called Say the Hard Thing. And it's about communication and having healthy conflict in specifically in like non-monogamous and queer relationships. And one of the things that we talk about is the difference between compromise versus sacrifice. Right? What is the difference between compromising with someone versus sacrificing something that is important to you, or crossing a boundary, or diminishing your own wants and needs because you should in this situation, quote unquote, should, or it's expected of you, or you don't want to cause conflict, or whatever it is. I completely agree that compromise is absolutely a part of relationships, but I think when there comes a point of compromise in relationships, that it is important to examine it. What is actually workable here? How am I actually feeling about this? Am I saying my needs and wants here, and having that back and forth? And that's not to say that in every situation that everything will always work out perfectly for every single person involved. I don't think that's possible. In fact, the research shows that it's not possible. If we look at the Gottman's research on relationships, the statistic is that 60% of conflicts are actually not really solvable, or not solvable in a way that is going to have every single person involved be completely happy and have every single one of their needs taken care of. And so most of the time, 60% of the time in conflicts in relationships, there's going to be compromise that like you're not completely happy with. However, I think it is important, again, to look at, am I being entitled here? Am I asking for things because I think someone else should acquiesce? Or am I on the opposite side of that where I am over giving in a way that doesn't work for me, or diminishing my own needs in a way that's also not workable for me as well? So it's complex. Compromise and relationships are complex, and it's very tender too. So I also do very much understand from a personal and professional point of view, like how tender it is to examine what is workable in times where you may need to compromise.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I think the fear that this part of the manifesto means never compromise comes
Mm.
probably from people who've experienced partners that don't compromise ever or enough. For example, I was going to say there is a difference between a compromise that comes from willingness and a compromise that comes from obligation or involves self-abandonment. I would say that's, like you were saying, not really compromise. It's more sacrifice than compromise. If we have
Mhm.
different language, it helps distinguish. And I think people who've been in relationships where they've been asked to sacrifice again and again and their partner's not even willing to compromise can have a big reaction against this idea
Mm.
that we need to trust our partners to compromise where they have the space to do that without hurting themselves, and that if they say no, it's because they really cannot do it without in some way hurting themselves, abandoning themselves, or neglecting someone else, but maybe multiple reasons why a compromise isn't workable, that it's not necessarily malicious or avoidant or selfish to say no sometimes. Mutuality, I think, comes from willingness rather than obligation, and that's what this section is really about for me,
Mm.
about choosing and maintaining relationships that are built on a basis of mutual desire and willingness, as opposed to obligation or entitlement or shoulds.
And I also think that when we talk about the word entitlement, I'm just going to throw in my domestic violence background here for a second. When we talk about like domestic violence and abusive relationships, when you get to the core of why people are abusive or why people behave that way, if we're looking specifically at behavior and like why they behave that way, one of the core aspects of abusive behavior is entitlement. Right. I am allowed to ask for things or to expect things of my partner, and I should get my way no matter what. Not to say that all entitlement is abusive, because that's also not true. I don't want people to go out and accuse people of being abusive if they're acting an entitled way. Those things are not mutually exclusive. But when we get all the way to the extremes of entitlement, then it can become abusive. And if we're looking at the word entitlement and we're looking at that thought process. You should do this for me. If you loved me, then you would do this. Any actions that I take are justified here. That's like more of the extreme of entitlement, but the point that I want to make with it is that it is more of a gradient where it's like we have small things that we all feel entitled to. Like we all have a sense of entitlement about something or about some things in our lives. And then it is this gradient that goes all the way to the extremes, right? And so I think part of it for us is to check our own entitlement too, and when we do that, when we're like, do I feel entitled here? Do I feel like my actions are justified even though it's not fair to other people? Do I feel like there's a should here? Like people should act a certain way and I should get my way for whatever reason? Examining that in ourselves as well is one way to understand entitlement a little bit better, to empathize with other people around entitlement, and also to be able to talk about it in a way that is more effective. When we can recognize it in ourselves, this can become a more effective conversation because then we can relate to people. Because what doesn't work inside of this conversation, like with compromise and entitlement, these are very charged words, right? And so when we can have conversations that are like, you know what, I understand where you're coming from. And also, this isn't workable for me. When we can have that empathy with people, we, first of all, we lessen the charge of whatever is happening because it's like, hey, it's not like you versus me. We're being humans together here. We're in this together. And also, I want to talk about what's not workable too. So that can also be a way to check your own entitlement, but also make it a conversation rather than an accusation of people. Because I also think that's where we falter in having these conversations is that we accuse people of making a sacrifice or we accuse people of being entitled. And whether we're right or wrong is like not really the point, but rather the point is where is our shared humanity in this? Say that your partner is wanting to go on a date on Friday night. They've been talking to this person on a dating app for a couple weeks. And they're like, oh, I'm going to go out on this date with this person on Friday night. And they're saying this to the partner, and the partner says something like, oh, don't you remember? We were going to do this on Friday night, or we were going to do this on Saturday morning, let's say. And so, does that actually work for you to go on this date on Friday night? Now, the person A who's going on the date, if they are acting from a place of entitlement, they might say something like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And I get to do whatever I want to do in this relationship because we are relationship anarchists or we are polyamorous, kind of using the structure of the relationship as a justification for why they don't need to compromise. They don't need to explain themselves. They automatically get defensive about it. And so that could be low grade entitlement in that situation. You should understand. You shouldn't ask me that question. I should be able to do whatever I want to do without having a conversation about it because this is the relationship structure. I'm just telling you out of a courtesy. I'm not telling you because you have any say so over it. Can you hear like the harshness behind that? Like harshness, defensiveness, entitlement behind it. And then the other person is left being like, okay, I guess, yeah, like, I mean, yeah, like, we are relationship anarchists, like, we are polyamorous, I guess, and, like, I just wanted to be considered in this situation. I feel like I should also be considered as well. Or maybe the person who is having these harsh things said to them is, "You always do this. You never consider me in this at all. You hide behind relationship anarchy when you just want to do whatever you want to do and you don't care about me at all." There's a lot of different ways that this conversation could go awry and turn into snipping at each other or yelling at each other or just being like, you should be this way. No, you should be this way. But if it were a conversation, then it would be something like partner A comes to partner B and says, hey, so I've been talking to this person on the app and we're talking about having a date on Friday. And I'd really love to go. I looked at the calendar. I don't think that anything is in the way of that. And I'm just letting you know that I'm going to go on this date. And then the other partner is, okay, got it. Thank you so much for letting me know. I have some weird feelings about that because I thought that we were going to do this on Saturday. So, what's your plan around that? I want to know more about it. And so that openness, curiosity, consideration, can you hear it's more of a conversation rather than this devolving accusation between people?
Yeah. I think it's about the tone, it's about the rigidity or the anger if you are denied what you want, where you can feel that it's more entitlement than just having an expectation or a hope that wasn't met, where there's rigidity and no flexibility. I wanted to give an example also from something that happened to me a few months ago. There was a period of time where I was just quite ill. I had a bladder infection. I wasn't like dying. I had antibiotics. It was going to take a few days to clear up, but I was feeling really crappy and not well enough to keep the fire going, which is the only source of heat in my home. and not really well enough to look after my cat, who needs quite a lot of medication and stuff. So I was like, I'm in a little bit of a bind. I live on my own. I'm quite ill and I can't really take care of myself or my dependent. So I needed to find a solution to that. And both of my partners were working at the time, and it's not easy for them to take time off work. They'd have to let down a lot of people to do that. Both of my partners live quite a long way away from me. However, my family, my parents, live not so far away from me, and my mum doesn't work, and my dad is often around. So they had a lot more resources to give, and I'm really lucky that I have a family that I can go to. I know not everybody has that, but that was a very valid option for me, to go and get taken care of by my family rather than asking my partners to drop everything to come and help me. And as a relationship anarchist, I'd also say that you could consider other forms of relationship as support, friends, whatever, but there just weren't any friends or partners who were available and who it would cost very little to help me, whereas it would cost my family very little to help me. So I went to my family, and I remember posting this on Instagram as an example of how I'm solo poly, but I am resourced and I'm not alone when I need help. And I also made it very clear in my post that my partners were very much present for me emotionally throughout that time. They were checking in on me all the time, as much as they could while they were working. So I didn't feel neglected at all by them. And I also know that if I had said to them, I'm in dire need of help right now, that one of them would have stepped up. So I made all this clear in the post. And yet, I had some people commenting that they would find it extremely offensive if their partner didn't drop things to come and help them. Obviously, they're entitled to their opinion on that and their preferences for how they are treated in their relationship. And maybe they're not relationship anarchist in their approach to relationships, and that's fine because we're all different. But that, for me, is an example of how entitlement can play out. And I'm not using entitlement with any malice. I'm not trying to be cruel towards this person, but there is an entitlement, as far as I'm concerned, behind saying, if I am sick, then my partners should be there for me, because if they're not there for me, it means that they don't care about me, and that there is no other way that they can show me that they care except to do exactly what I want them to do in that moment, which is a very risky place to be. Because if you're only measuring your partner's love for you by how much they meet the precise expectations and hopes you have for them, even when there are other options available that make a lot more sense practically, then you're kind of setting them up to disappoint you. They're either going to meet the expectation and impress you and they earn your love and respect, or they disappoint you and you're angry with them and it causes an argument. And I think it's that black and white where people can either succeed or fail in your eyes that characterizes entitlement versus just a healthy expectation. Because I would expect, if I'm in the hospital dying, that my partners come and say goodbye. I think that's like pretty reasonable expectation. I'm not going to be feeling upset for long because I'll be dead soon. But in that situation, I would be sad and I think justifiably pissed off if they didn't turn up to say goodbye to me. But in this situation, it just wasn't like that. And they were there, as I said. I felt a real discrepancy between how I was reading that situation and how safe and loved I actually felt versus how someone heard that and thought it was so egregious that my partners didn't drop everything to come help me.
And for me, that just points to the sentence on here that says, rather than looking for compromises in every situation, let loved ones choose paths that keep their integrity intact without letting this mean a crisis for the relationship. And so in that situation, Ro, it's like you didn't have to look for a compromise, and you didn't look for a compromise. You weren't like, "Can you meet me halfway? Can you maybe come over after work?" You don't need to look for a compromise in every situation. And next portion, let loved ones choose paths that keep their integrity intact. You said your partner's work, they have other people that rely on them as well. And so with their current life circumstances, what had the most integrity for them to do was to not come and be with you while you were sick, but rather to keep working and keep doing whatever their current obligations are in their lives. And the last part, without letting this mean a crisis for the relationship. Again, very well illustrated in this story. Like, it's not a crisis that my partners have other obligations while I am sick. And one of those reasons being is that, yeah, I'm resourced in other ways. I'm not just dependent on their support for my well being. I have family, I have friends, I have other support systems as well. And I think that's something that I really enjoy or relate to with relationship anarchy is that in breaking down the shoulds and supposed tos of romantic relationships, it also opens up possibility and expands other types of relationships like family, like friends, like colleagues, right? So, yeah, I think that your story beautifully illustrates that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting in this part that you were just highlighting in the manifesto, the phrase that really jumps out at me is without letting this mean a crisis for the relationship. For me, that phrasing really paints all of this as a choice that we make. We can choose to make it mean that our partners don't love us when they disappoint us or disagree with us or do something we don't approve of. I'm not just talking about my situation, but beyond it, in all sorts of situations, we can make it mean something terrible. And a lot of people do. And I think it's because we're taught that if we're not in alignment all the time, that is a crisis, that's dangerous. And some people really feel that on a nervous system level. If I'm not in alignment with my partner, I'm actually in danger. And I definitely have compassion and respect for that. But I love that the manifesto frames it as like, it doesn't have to mean that. You can choose to frame it a different way. You can choose to still believe in the love felt for you, in spite of the fact that you're not in alignment right now.
Yeah, and I wanna break that down even further because I love that as humans, we make meaning of everything, right? Like, we walk out, we go to the coffee shop, someone looks at us funny, and now all of a sudden it's that person has malintent or that person's a jerk or something like that, when maybe when we looked over at them, they were having stomach cramps. You have no idea, right? Like, you have no idea why they made that face. And that's a silly example, but it illustrates how quickly we make things mean things all the time in inconsequential situations. And so when we're talking about relationships that we have a lot of investment inside of, that can be very dangerous and tricky when we have this mechanism of meaning making that we might not always be aware of, or we might immediately agree with. It's not even that we make meaning, it's more that we immediately agree with the meaning that we make of something. Someone doesn't do something, we make it mean that they don't care about us, and now we agree with ourselves that they don't care about us. And we continue to operate like they don't care about us based off of that meaning, but not actually reality. We actually don't know if they did that thing because they don't care. Maybe they had no idea. Maybe they did it with all the consideration for you in the world. And because of how you responded to it, now you've made it mean that they don't care. And so being able to examine those things within ourselves and then make it a conversation, and you can make it a serious conversation if you want to, but I often like to make it a lighter conversation depending on whatever the situation is. Like, I have a partner of mine and we call them brain thoughts. So whenever we have those little meaning making moments, we're just like, hey, I have a brain thought to share with you. And we both know that means we've made something up and we're checking it out. I have a brain thought that the reason that you didn't ask me to come to lunch with you is because we've been spending too much time together and you're annoyed with me and you don't want to spend time with me. Oh, okay. Thank you for telling me your brain thought. I didn't invite you to lunch because you have told me that you have a lot of work to do and I didn't want to bother you. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then they're like, "Do you wanna come to lunch with me then?" And I'm like, "No, I'm really busy and I have a lot of work to do." And they're like, okay, there you go.
I just wanted to have hurt feelings,
I just,
okay? I don't have time to have lunch with you. I just wanted to feel hurt.
I just wanted to feel hurt and left out for a second. Thank you for telling me that I'm not a left out, but I really do have a lot of work to do. I just wanted to be invited to lunch so I could tell you no. We're such silly creatures. Not to diminish how upset we get about things.
The
We
reasons
can,
why we have that adaptation in place or that filter on things, it exists for a reason. We've obviously had some kind of experience or maybe many experiences across a long time that make us believe that X means Y. And it's a shorthand for interpreting reality that allows us to keep ourselves safe. Like, it's all got value and reasons why it exists. But yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is the value of recognizing those interpretations as interpretations and externalizing them so that you can check them in reality and make sure that you're not assuming things.
yeah, exactly. Okay, we have 7 more minutes until we do Q&A. Is there anything that you feel that you really wanted to cover in these last 7 minutes, Ro?
Yes. So is that okay? So you asked
Yeah,
me.
no, I know. I have so many things that I want to cover, and I just got really excited by how excited you got about that. So let's go.
Yeah.
Let
Okay.
me hear it.
I wanted to focus on the second sentence here. Your feelings for a person or your history together does not make you entitled to command and control a partner to comply with what is considered normal to do in a relationship. What I love about this is that what's considered normal to do in a relationship has nothing to do with the relationship that you are building with someone. Who cares what is considered normal? What actually works for the two of you? That's the first point. And that's what I love about Relationship Anarchy. It's all about customization in relationships and throwing out norms and saying, what do we actually want? Maybe we want some of those normative things, but let's choose it. Let's not just do it automatically. But I really wanted to hone in on the idea of your history with someone else doesn't entitle you to something, because that was one of the things that I was saying earlier, that someone responded to my story saying, yeah, your history should give you like some like extra consideration. And I think that's a perfectly fine perspective to take. It's just not a relationship anarchist take. It's not a relationship anarchist approach to stuff. Of course, the partner that I have been with for 6 years, who I know incredibly deeply, is going to maybe move me more when they are feeling big feelings than the person I have just met and I'm getting to know, and I haven't got that kind of history, and we haven't been through the ups and downs together and the trials and tribulations and all the rest of it. The level of safety and connection and attachment and understanding I feel for the person I've known longer, of course we can't get away from that. But if, and he would never do this, but if he said to me one day, because I have two partners, one that I've been with for 2 years and one for 6, if he said, I don't want you to go to your other partner's a party tonight because I would like someone to go to the cinema with me tonight. It's something not important, I'm thinking, something that's not urgent. If I said to him, the party's been in the books for ages, I agreed to go to it, he's expecting me there to support, can we go to the cinema another night? Is that possible? And then he's like, no, it's only on tonight and I want to go. And if you really loved me and if you really took our relationship seriously, then you would come to the cinema with me tonight because I've known you longer. Come on. I deserve this. Don't I deserve this for all the time I've put in? I'm giving this example in such an extreme way. I think very few people say it in such overt language that sounds so entitled, but it is kind of underneath a lot of what people are saying. They're like, why are you taking that person's needs into consideration? What about my needs? My needs should matter more because I've known you longer. I think that happens all the time. And I just really feel that for me, the best way to approach problem solving in relationships is to consider the genuine need and vulnerability of everyone involved and consider my responsibility and my commitments and what I have said I will do, and whether there is realistically any flexibility that won't mean me going back on commitments I've made or hurting someone who's vulnerable. History really has nothing to do with it. It's more about the situation that you're in and who really needs help more and who have you committed to help? Who do you have a responsibility towards? And sorry, I know I'm taking up all the airtime, but like one other example I wanted to give, because I think it's helpful having examples. I hope it's
Yeah.
helpful.
No, it is.
Okay, good. I'll very briefly say, like, I was once in a situation where I was vetoed. And for those who are listening who don't know what that means, vetoing in non-monogamy and polyamory means one partner forbidding another relationship. So saying, I forbid, veto, I forbid in Latin. My relationship with this partner was vetoed by his other partner. And it was essentially because she felt that as the existing partner, he ought to have considered her more in a situation, more than me and more than himself and what he wanted. I think the history aspect comes up a lot in veto power, particularly. It's often exercised because people are saying, I am the existing partner. I have more history with you, so I get to decide which relationships you can be in and which ones you can't. And veto power is absolutely at odds with a relationship anarchist approach, in my view.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think a couple things that I want to highlight in what you shared too is, again, going back to there's no right or wrong way. What you said was looking from a relationship anarchist point of view, right? Where it's, yeah, if you were looking at it from a different lens, we might come to a different conclusion with things. And so it's not that looking at it from a relationship anarchist lens is better, superior, the right way to do things, anything like that. But if we look at it from this lens, then we see it in this way and we can draw these conclusions. From a relationship anarchist lens, it doesn't matter how long you have been with someone. But again, that does not mean that everyone's needs can't be considered. But yeah, I think inside of this bullet point, your feelings for a person or your history together does not make you entitled to command and control a partner to comply with what is considered normal to do in a relationship. I see this come up so much in polyamory, and I know polyamory is not synonymous with relationship anarchy. I'm just sharing that it does come up so much in polyamory about how long you've been together or the type of relationship that you have with that person. And for me, I believe that if you want to have this more relationship anarchist lens, that it has to be a part of the agreements of your relationship, right? Like it does need to be talked about and agreed upon between everyone. I'm thinking of my relationships that I have had. As I said yesterday, for those of you who weren't here, my partner Alec has given permanent permission to share about our relationship. And so I do name him and I do say more specific things about him. But part of our agreements in our relationship are around the understanding that the longevity of our relationship doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the priority that we're given. And in having that agreement, it does make things a lot easier because it's already a practice that we have on a regular basis. And so, if you want to make this work in practice, what I have seen work the best, not just for myself, but for other people, is the agreements that you make in the relationship and then the practicing of those agreements. And when I say practice, I also mean getting them wrong. Sometimes I'm making mistakes inside of them too, where it's just, oh, I thought the agreement meant this. Like, I thought that this is what we were agreeing to. And so, therefore, this is why I acted this way in this situation. Oh, okay, I was under the impression that it would mean this. So that's why I acted this way in this situation. So when you come to a point where the agreement is not workable or not working in a specific situation, just being able to talk about that too, staying out of accusation land and rather being more curious. Oh, it was my understanding was this. What was your understanding of that? Okay, so this is where we messed up. Okay, well, what do we need to do to make this workable? So, staying in curiosity land, staying in more of this what works, what doesn't work, how can we do better moving forward, right? Instead of the you said this, so therefore it means this, and I am now entitled to this, right? Yeah, I know that was non-specific because I didn't use a specific situation, so I hope that was easily followable.
I think
Followable.
I think it was followable. So I think it was followable. What really stands out there is giving your partner the benefit of the doubt and believing that they are fundamentally a good person who has good intentions towards you. I think is so important to be able to navigate situations like that. And we are going to move to a Q&A very shortly, and I'm sure that things we haven't covered will probably come up in the Q&A. I just wanted to share while you're all formulating your questions in your minds that letting go of entitlement in a relationship, I think, often reveals a lot of vulnerability. Feeling entitled to things can be a way of protecting against a fear of not being chosen, a fear of not mattering to someone. So if I feel entitled to XYZ behavior in a relationship, then I don't have to ever consider the fact that I'm not chosen. If I feel entitled to be chosen all the time, if I believe that and I enforce that and my partner goes along with that, I don't ever have to be exposed to the fear of not being chosen. And it's really hard, but really worth doing the work, I feel, to tolerate that fear and feel, okay, I might not be chosen every time, but that doesn't mean I don't matter. Or I might not be chosen every time by other people, but I always choose myself and take care of myself.
Also, just speaking from personal experience that when you do confront that fear and do the work to move through it, and you do have relationships where everyone can choose or not choose you, when that is open and available and they still choose you, that feeling is beautiful. My personal point of view is that is one of the most beautiful, freeing feelings in the world when I don't feel entitled to someone's love. I don't feel entitled to someone choosing me, and yet they still do. And they could choose not to, and there would be no consequences to them not doing that.
Mhm.
Like, they are free to go. But that's just my 2 cents on that. So, I would love to open it up to Q&A. We did have someone earlier who messaged in that said, "Would it make sense to communicate you would like to be taken care of in a certain way, like having a partner take care of you in person when you're sick, but within their limits without asking them to drop everything? I do think the expression of care is more important, but I would still have expectations around that."
And I think the way it's phrased is useful. So it says, you would like to be taken care of. It's totally fine to express a preference, to say it really means a lot to me when people take care of me when I'm sick. I don't have other resources available to me, perhaps. So, my absolute ideal in those situations, if it within reason, like you say, within their limits, then that really means a lot to me. I think that's fine. That's you advocating for your preferences in a relationship. The line between a preference and a demand is, I think, quite clear, right? If I say, my preference is this, versus if you don't do this, I'm going to be pissed. If you don't manage to meet that expectation, even if it costs you a lot personally, mentally, financially, emotionally, time wise, whatever, if you don't, then I'm going to make that mean something about how much you care about me, about your commitment to our relationship. I'm going to hold it against you. I'm going to bring it up in 10 weeks' time when you've forgotten all about it, but I haven't. I'm going to be holding on to it and I'm going to use that as ammunition against you. That's a very different thing. So, like I said at the start, this part of the Relationship Anarchy Manifesto isn't about having no needs or no preferences or no desires. It's about that really important line between having a preference and feeling entitled and making demands where there are consequences for going against what you want. I hope that makes sense. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that you said that really well. And I also think that, when we're talking about getting our needs met in relationships, that at a certain point, and this is around autonomy and letting people be who they are, not asking them to change who they are, But if you're in a relationship with someone and they are repeatedly doing behavior that's not wrong, it's not bad, it's not wrong, but it isn't meeting your needs of a relationship, maybe it's just not a workable or compatible relationship. And that's also okay too. And I think that inside of love and respect instead of entitlement also opens up the possibility for really just examining, given the way this person does relationships and the way I do relationships and what I need, is this compatible? Is this workable? Because sometimes we get into relationships with people and we really like them, and so we really want it to work, and or we do have that fear of not being chosen or whatever it is that keeps us attached to this person. Sometimes that attachment, whatever that might be, gives way to asking for things or expecting things that the person that you're with didn't sign up for or isn't willing to give. And this can have really tragic consequences. That can be really heartbreaking. I don't want to diminish the feeling of being in a relationship with someone who can't or won't meet your needs. But if that's a pattern, then maybe this isn't a workable relationship. And that can also be a conversation with them too. It seems like when I'm having a hard time, that just doesn't seem to be something that you're available for. Is that true? How do you feel about that? I don't want you to change as a person. If that's not what you're available for, that's fine. But I would like to be in a relationship with someone who is available when I am having a hard time.
Yeah, the pattern is really important, right? A one off is not necessarily an indication of someone's feelings or capacity. But if
Right.
a pattern, then that's something more. The very same partners who abandoned me when I was sick have also been there for me on many other occasions. So it's not a pattern. I think also there's a distinction between wanting something in a relationship because, in inverted commas, this is what partners are supposed to do for each other versus this is what I actually want and this is why it means something to me. Like explicit agreements versus assumptions, I think is a really important distinction.
Yeah, I do have another example of that, unless someone else has a question, because I don't want to take up all the time just with one thing if someone else has a
Yeah.
question or a comment.
Let's leave a little space, see if any questions emerge. And if not, then I would love to hear your example.
I think I just want to jump in. Hi, everyone. Because in my experience, it made a huge difference, like when I shared a preference or a want or a need, and letting the other person decide how they meet it. So what are options for you that are workable for you? And yeah, it's the difference between I'm expecting something and it has to go exactly this way, or like giving them options and let them come up with options to meet you in this need. And this was a game changer for my relationships because people can keep their integrity within it, and they can also show like they want to meet your needs and they want to meet you there. And yeah, I think this is maybe helpful for some people.
I love that. Yeah. Put a little bit of the onus on them to come up with solutions rather than you saying, this is the solution I want. I love that.
Yeah, that's really beautiful because that reminds me, first sentence, deciding not to base a relationship on a foundation of entitlement is respecting others' independence and self-determination. That just reminds me of that self-determination part. Hey, I have this need. Are you willing to meet it? And then here are some options or what works for you in doing that. I love that. You also got a lot of hearts and thumbs up. I don't know if you saw that in sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. Really welcome any other thoughts and comments as well as questions like that, because that was so useful.
Yeah, beautiful. Christy.
I just wanted to acknowledge that what you said, that sometimes these just don't work out and that's okay. I forget the part where that's okay. A lot of the times I've tried romantic polyamory, it hasn't worked out. I was vetoed and I have trust issues around trying to pursue that kind of relationship in the future, but I look at all of my relationships, romantic or not, and I think that a lot of my concerns and issues are arising in terms of entitlement, arise from the fact that a lot of people feel like relationships are something they have Whereas I think it's something people do, and it's active participation. I am very communicative with my needs, and it's just that expression. If they wanted to, they would. I don't know if you've heard of that expression before, but it's just, I guess, where the entitlement comes in maybe is after expressing my needs and then giving them the room to show whether they can meet them. A lot of them show an understanding of what I communicated, and then they just never are able to act on it. And so I guess my entitlement just feels like a lot of people are so passive in my life in terms of my relationships, and I end up doing so much of the emotional labor and being that glue. If I express needs, I feel some sort of entitlement, something to show for it. I just end up abandoning so many of my relationships because there's just no reciprocation, and I just feel entitled to that reciprocation. So I don't know. I can acknowledge that it's okay, but it's painful, and I don't even know if I have the desire to continue relating to people at this point, because it's just past experiences feel like it's so difficult. I don't know what the roadmap looks like for starting future relationships when even established friendships fall apart based off of my expectations.
I really appreciate you sharing what you're going through. It sounds like there is a huge amount of nuance in this, so I'm kind of worried about addressing some of the things you said, not knowing some more details, and I'm not going to ask you because it's personal and this is a public setting and all that. So bearing in mind that what I might say may not be perfectly applicable to your situation, I still wanted to give some thoughts, if that's all right, that you are entitled to reciprocity. As Elizabeth was saying earlier, there's a spectrum of entitlement, and some things are bare minimum in a relationship, and other things are above and beyond or about control. And if you don't feel like you're getting basic reciprocity in a relationship, then that is something that I think you do deserve. And expressing that you have a need and not feeling like it's heard or taken into consideration or acted on and nothing changes, it highlights an incompatibility in the relationship perhaps, but it also may just highlight that person's not available to be reciprocal with you. And I'm sorry that you've been through that, and I hear the sadness in what you're sharing. I've been through more than my fair share of breakups in my life, and I think after each one I'm like, fuck this, I'm never going to love again. I do believe there are people out there who are willing to hear what we have to say and respond to it, and it's just about finding those people.
Yeah.
That is not, in my book, entitlement. What do you think, Elizabeth?
No, I 100% agree. And I wouldn't even use the word entitlement in this situation, to be honest. And I actually just, we should have done this earlier, but I just Googled what entitlement is. And this is what it came up with. It says entitlement is the belief that one deserves special treatment, privileges, or rewards without earning them, often characterized by arrogance, lack of empathy, and controlling behavior. And it goes on. But I think that the word deserving is much more appropriate in this situation when we're talking about reciprocity in relationships. If people can't meet you where you're trying to meet them, I completely understand and have so much empathy for how painful that is. You are putting yourself out there, you're telling people what you need, and people are saying things, but then they're not doing things. And that's really hard. And just like Ro, I've definitely been in positions very recently. One could say I might even still be there a little bit, where I'm just like, do I really need romantic relationships? Fuck this shit. What the fuck? And so I can very much empathize with that as well. But I also know that there are people in the world who will meet you there. And what's coming up for me right now and what you shared is just this mixture of, yeah, it really fucking sucks to be in strings of relationships that people don't meet you halfway and don't have that reciprocity. And the other mixture here is, and there are people who will. And I hate that to sound Pollyanna. I don't mean it to, but I truly do believe and know from, again, personal and professional experience that there are people in the world who will absolutely meet you where you're at and respond to your needs in ways that feel nourishing. Yeah.
So many good questions to answer.
So many good
We
questions.
have-
We're running out of time, y'all. Grace, you
Yeah.
popped your head on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for these sessions. I'm like so excited to be in conversation about, the like minutia of relationship anarchy. And my question is actually about that. I'm curious how either or both of you would explain or help create clarity around what I experience a lot of. I'm really lucky to be in a lot of like polyamorous relationship anarchy community. And something I see happening a lot is that people will excuse personal choices or behavior to be dismissive of or inconsiderate of partners by deflecting it onto the relationship structure. For example, I don't owe you an explanation for my behavior. Your needs are not my responsibility. We're anarchists, or you're insecure and jealous, but we're in a polyamorous relationship. So you should have known that these feelings and these experiences were going to happen to you. And to me, it's like really obvious that's a bit manipulative, but I feel like maybe I would benefit from some like additional information about how you would explain to someone like that's not inherent relationship anarchy behavior. That's a personal choice that's being made in your relationship. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you would go about describing that to someone.
Well, I can nerd out on the political point of view of it. Starting with the political point of view, anarchy does not mean everyone for themselves. Anarchy means lack of a supreme ruler or rejection of a supreme ruler where people are self-governed. Literally at the base of anarchy, it does not mean not caring for one another, not supporting one another, not considering one another. All it means is that there is not a hierarchy. But when we talk about self-governance, what we are talking about is something that is more communal, right? Yes, we're talking about what do I need, but we're also talking about what are the needs of the community, because we can't be a silo. It does not work to just look out for ourselves and our own best interests from a political standpoint, but also from a relational standpoint. And so the academic asshole in me wants to give everyone that response whenever they do shit like that. But the person who works on a professional level with people and helping them in their relationships would come at it from more of a workability standpoint. How does it actually work? Depending on the relationship that I have with this person, I might challenge them and be like, how does that actually work for you in relationships? Like, how does it actually work for you to just consider yourself and dismiss the needs of other people? Like, how do you see that playing out for you? That might be the more challenging way that I might, but again, I might not say that to everyone. It really would depend on the relationship that I have with that person. But Ro, I know that you have very empathetic answers.
Oh, I don't know, because I think how is that working for you is a pretty fair response to that. But yeah, I really don't like the language of I don't owe you this because relationship anarchy. Yes, you don't actually owe me anything. You don't have to do anything. But do you want to or not? That's what I'm interested in. They're hiding behind the structure and saying they think this is what the structure means and therefore they're exempt from responsibility. Stop hiding behind it and tell me what you actually feel. Why don't you want to give me an explanation for this? Is there a legitimate reason that you find this intrusive? For example, let's actually have a conversation and relate to each other, as opposed to, I don't owe that information to you. Because I have a partner who will often say stuff like, oh, I saw a friend today. And it pisses me off because I'm like, I know all of your friends. Just tell me the name of the friend. Why not telling me? And I'm like, who are you? Why are you hiding this? Why won't you fucking tell me the name of the friend? He doesn't owe me the name of the friend. And for him, there are reasons why it feels safer to say it that way. It feels nice to just have a little bit of privacy around certain things. That's fine. That's a legitimate angle to take. But for him to say, I'm not going to tell you who I saw today because relationship anarchy, so fuck you. That's not relational. That's not going to bring us closer together. We're still in relationship with each other. We're meant to care about each other and to take into consideration the impact we have on each other. So yeah, that's my semi-empathetic response, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. That was really actually quite helpful because I too am like an academic asshole about it, but it is what's happening in my relationships. So this is a helpful reframe.
Yeah, I would lead from the vulnerability that you have in this. This is what it feels like to me when you do that. And what would really help me is to understand what's really going on for you behind that response. We are going to have to wrap up the Q&A, even though we're having really good conversations.
I know, this is so good. This is so good. But I'm not trying to defend the academic asshole perspective because it is not workable. It is, I know it's not. And I don't do that in real life, but it is really great. But actually, I am that person. All right, y'all. I just want to say thank you so much for being here on behalf of Ro and myself. We're so happy to have you. Please come back for whatever you can make of the rest of these live podcast episodes. Love it.
I see somebody has stayed up until 3 a.m. to come to this, so thanks for that. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
If you want to get in touch with us, go to the podcast description. You can share your feedback, suggest themes for future series, and find ways to work with us.
If you liked this, leave us a 5-star review with a comment. It really helps our sweet little baby of a podcast grow.
And if you didn't like it, maybe don't leave a review. Just go complain to a friend.
Thanks so much for listening.
All the love.